disagreements. Do you think that Jake's gotten better as a boxer?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And listen, what Jake Paul has accomplished is he's fighting old guys.
Dana White has just confirmed the seemingly impossible fight between Jake Paul and Conor McGregor. Honestly, this announcement has left fans and fighters scratching their heads. How did a YouTuber turned fighter get the chance to face off with some of the biggest names in boxing? Especially against veterans who haven't stepped into the ring in years.
Yeah, he'll never do that though. He knows. He knows way.
One, he's under contract, and
he's
two,
not his own boss.
And two, he won't do it. He knows better. He might.
And it's
say,
funny to say like, yo, Conor McGregor is scared of Jake Paul and will never box him, but it's.
Well, that's the ironic reality of the fight game of Paul. Jake Paul's rise isn't just about skill. It's about making money. And that's exactly what Dana White has been saying all along. It's all about the spectacle, the drama, and the payday. And here we are, staring at what feels more like a circus show than a legitimate fight.
Okay, yeah, so you never thought it's just like another little world, isn't it? Yeah. So I'm open for it.
Jake Paul versus Conor McGregor. It's a sentence that would have sounded like some fever dream a couple of years ago and is now a real-world headline. Dana White himself confirmed it.
Jake Paul, Conor McGregor. Is that fight happening or what?
Probably not, no.
Are you closed off to it completely?
I'm never completely closed.
Yeah, Dana White, the guy who once dismissed Jake Paul like he was some TikTok clown trying to play dress-up in a real fighter's world. And now, Dana's all in, shaking hands, making deals, and basically turning the combat sports universe upside down. If this isn't the wildest twist in MMA history, I don't know what is. But the actual question is, why now? Why Jake Paul and why Conor McGregor? Turns out it's not just some random cash grab, though let's not pretend the money isn't obscene here.
What we do here is completely different than what him and his brother are doing. You know what I mean? I'm looking for the absolute best in the world. These guys who have trained their whole life, they fight in these smaller shows and then they make it to the UFC, and we put the best against the best.
This is Dana White's move to stay ahead in the fight game, a way to tap into a new audience while keeping the old fans grumbling but glued to their seats. You've got Jake Paul, the YouTuber turned boxer turned MMA hopeful, stepping into the octagon. It's a fight that doesn't care about tradition or rules, and honestly, that's why it's genius. Hate it, love it, tweet angrily about it, or whatever. You're still watching.
It's funny to say like, yo, Conor McGregor is scared of Jake Paul and will never box him, but it's truth.
And let's talk about Jake for a second. The guy knows how to stir the pot. Remember when he called out Conor McGregor publicly? Yeah, no weight class, straight MMA.
And he did that tonight, but at the same time, you can't lose sight of the fact that man 58, man. But I'm not disappointed about it because it's a 58-year-old man that got whipped himself in that kind of shape to come in here and at least stand in front of this dude.
Especially when you're a guy who just bulked up to fight Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson is the literal icon of punching people into oblivion, even if he's 58. Jake beat him and now thinks he's ready for the Irish tornado that is Conor McGregor.
Yeah, so he has a big name in the UK. The Pauls, that Tyson fight is just a strange one to me. I hope Tyson takes his nose off. I'm sure at some stage. We'll go through all of these guys.
Now, Conor didn't exactly take this lying down. The guy practically invented trash talk as a modern art form. He fired back with, and I quote, "Jake Paul is the biggest pissbag I've ever seen in my life." Jake didn't back down, not even close. He kept trolling, tweeting, dropping videos, and turning up the volume until the noise got too loud to ignore. And guess what? It worked. This isn't just a fight anymore, it's a spectacle, the kind of thing you tell your friends about whether they watch MMA or not.
It's funny to say like, yo, Conor McGregor is scared of Jake Paul and will never box him, but it's truth. And look at him go toe-to-toe with Nate Diaz, who was...
And the timing Jake chose is classic. Jake Paul isn't just riding high on confidence after his wins over Nate Diaz and Tyson. He's practically surfing on a wave of self-belief.
The YouTuber nerds could be like, I would consider that a nixer. Your uncle's friend needs a radiator fitted in his house, so he'll do a side job and get a side pay. I would consider them guys to be nicks.
But this fight isn't just about Jake's ego or Conor's comeback. This is about what it means for combat sports. Is Jake Paul stepping into the MMA cage? That's a seismic shift. Jake versus Conor is bigger than MMA, bigger than boxing. It's the ultimate crossover event where a YouTuber is colliding with a legacy fighter.
Conor has 2 fights left on his fight deal, but the UFC is trying to renew their rights deal because they license their content, which are the fights, to platforms. So they're trying to renew their deal with their negotiating multiple people, but let's say it's going to go with ESPN.
And Conor? Let's not pretend he's just sitting pretty here. The man's got 2 fights left on his UFC contract, and the timing couldn't be more perfect. The UFC is in the middle of negotiating their broadcast rights deal, and having Conor headline a fight gives them insane leverage. Dana White isn't just booking fights. He's playing chess on a whole different level.
And
He's not his own boss.
And 2, he won't do it. He knows better. He might
And it's
say,
funny to say, like, yo, Conor McGregor is scared of Jake Paul and will never box him, but it's the truth.
So, here we are, watching Jake Paul tweet his way into a fight no one thought was possible, and Conor McGregor, the king of comebacks, gearing up for what might be the most bizarre, talked-about clash in fight history. Is it about respect? No. Is it about legacy? Maybe for Conor? Is it about money? But more than anything, it's about 2 worlds colliding in the loudest and most chaotic way possible.
Deal and get him the most amount of money. So a part of that negotiation is, hey, we have Conor McGregor for 2 more fights. But if he were to fight now, that wouldn't be a part of the negotiation.
Conor McGregor's contract situation is a drama that is so juicy that it could outdo any soap opera. The man hasn't set foot in the octagon in 2 years and counting. The real reason? UFC's ironclad contract clauses.
The company would be like, oh, yeah, well, you only have Conor for one fight. So that's why Conor's not fighting right now. And this is what they do to the fighters is if you sign the contract that you didn't sign, if you win, then you're like locked in for 3 more fights or something like that. And there's each contract is different, but you basically don't want to win because then you're locked in for 3.
For McGregor, the UFC basically owns him until he fulfills his contractual obligations. The UFC is knee-deep in renegotiating their broadcast rights deal, and having a name like Conor McGregor in the mix gives Dana White all the leverage in the world. The man's no fool. He's been vocal about feeling owned and operated by the UFC. He's even hinted at the idea of legal battles if he doesn't get the fights he actually wants. But this fight with Jake Paul? It might just be Dana's masterstroke to get what the UFC needs, and what Conor wants a lucrative fight to make everyone happy.
Like, he shouldn't even be fighting Conor McGregor. These guys are huge. He's huge. His brother's huge. I mean, what's your brother, 6'1"?
Yeah.
210?
Yeah.
Conor McGregor's 145, 155 pounds.
Oh, he fights that low. I thought he fights like 160. I thought he fights like 165.
He's looking a bit thick now. He's looking a bit thick.
Conor hasn't fought since July 2021 when he shattered his leg in that fight against Dustin Poirier. That's a long layoff, and in the fight world, ring rust is real. Meanwhile, Jake's been active, jumping from fight to fight like he's got something to prove, which, let's face it, he does. And then there's the weight difference. Jake Paul walks around at a solid 190 pounds, while McGregor has spent most of his career fighting at 155. That's a 40-pound gap, which might as well be a canyon in combat sports. How's that going to play out in an MMA fight? Will Jake's size and power give him the edge, or will Conor's speed and technique be too much for the younger fighter?
What about you and Conor McGregor? Are you interested in that?
Yeah, he'll never do that, though. He knows. He knows way.
One, he's under contract.
But let's not sleep on Jake Paul's growing reputation. He's gone from a punchline to a legitimate name in combat sports. Sure, the purists still roll their eyes, but even they can't deny the numbers. For Conor, this fight is a chance to remind everyone who he is and show that even after injuries, time off, and all the distractions, he's still the notorious one.
Jake Paul saying he was banned from all UFC events and then put the costume on.
Yeah, nobody's banned from the UFC. Listen, that kid knows how to market.
Dana White, the man who spent the years scoffing at Jake Paul like he's some kind of pest buzzing around the UFC's greatness, has just pulled the ultimate plot twist. He greenlit Jake Paul versus Conor McGregor. And let's be real, this isn't just a fight. This is a gamble. Dana's rolling the dice like his entire Las Vegas empire depends on it.
Jake Paul have had your disagreements. Do you think that Jake's gotten better as a boxer?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And listen, what Jake Paul has accomplished is he's fighting old guys.
Yes.
He's fighting, all he fights are old guys and whatever. But listen, say what you want, he wins. And he makes money.
And the irony is that Dana White has spent years trashing Jake Paul like he's a TikTok star trying to get into the Olympics. He's called him a clown, mocked his boxing career, and dismissed his fights as not real. But now Jake Paul is walking into the UFC's world with his fists up and his social media army in tow. Let's dig into the wild cards because this fight is packed with them. First up, Jake Paul's secret weapon, his absolute shamelessness. He's been known to negotiate crazy fight rules like oversized gloves that give him just enough of an edge. If there's a loophole, Jake will find it. And if the fight ends in controversy, this guy turned a split decision loss to Tommy Fury into a marketing campaign complete with tweets, memes, and endless press coverage.
I would consider that a nixer. Your uncle's friend needs a radiator fitted in his house, so he'll do a side job and get a side pay. I would consider them guys to be nixers.
And then there's Conor McGregor. Conor's temper is about as stable as nitroglycerin in a blender. McGregor's unpredictability is as much a part of his brand as his left hook. Could he lose it during the press tour? Absolutely. Could that spill over into the fight itself? You bet. And honestly, wouldn't that just make the whole thing even more entertaining? Talking about the fallout, because no matter who wins, the ripples are going to be massive. If Jake Paul pulls off the unthinkable and beats Conor McGregor in an MMA fight, it's game over for anyone who's ever doubted him. He won't just be a YouTuber dabbling in combat sports, he'll be the face of crossover fights, the guy who toppled a UFC icon in his own domain. At that point, who's going to say no to Jake Paul? Not Dana White, that's for sure. Jake will have the leverage to demand even bigger fights, maybe even a shot at a UFC title. Crazy? Sure. But so is this whole fight. And if Conor wins, well, it's the comeback story of a lifetime. McGregor, the guy who's been written off by half the MMA world, steps back into the spotlight and reclaims his throne. A win against Jake Paul doesn't just boost Conor's ego, it cements his status as the ultimate crossover king. The man who can take on anyone, anywhere, and still come out on top. It's the kind of victory that puts him back in the headlines for all the right reasons, erasing the narrative of his injuries and inactivity. But let's not forget the ripple effect. This fight could inspire an entire wave of crossover matchups.